Anybody know what that picture is of? You're allowed to yell out, you're not in school now. Yeah, who said that? Peter, you. Have you got my cheat notes there? Is that why you can see the answer?
Maybe I got the right answer, did I?
It came from over there. Yes, those are the Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe in Africa. And several years ago, my family, not all of it, my husband and myself and our two youngest children, Leonard was my husband who did the welcome and the prayer, that's right. We visited Victoria Falls for a holiday. And because we were going to be there over the Sabbath, we decided that it would be really good to spend Sabbath in nature, looking at all the great things that God had created there in Zimbabwe. So when we were booking the holiday, we looked on the internet and we found a company that offered a river safari, canoeing up the Zambezi River. And that river up there that makes the falls, that is the big Zambezi River. So we looked at the pictures on their website and we decided, now that would be a lovely way to spend Sabbath, don't you reckon? In a canoe, someone paddling you around and showing you all the sights of nature. It certainly would be a Sabbath to remember. So we booked a Zambezi River canoe safari. Early on Sabbath morning, we were picked up from our hotel at about 8 o'clock in a truck that had open sides and seats in the back. It was really good to be able to sit out in the fresh air as we drove along, because even though it was only 8 o'clock in the morning, it was already 35 degrees. Oops. The truck drove us for quite a long way through very dry, hot, dusty bushland, bumping over a very rough dirt road. And then by 9 o'clock, after we'd picked up one more passenger, we arrived at our destination, beside the Zambezi River. While the driver gave us some breakfast, his two helpers went to get the canoes ready. And then, just before we could start on our trip down the river, we had a talk from our guide. Now, I had chosen this safari because it had a guide. We didn't know anything about the Zambezi River. We didn't know where it would be the best place to find the best animals to look at. So we chose this safari because it had a guide who would paddle our canoe for us and show us where all the best sites were. And this was him. His name was Jacob, or as they say with African accent, Jacob. He had a very strong African accent. And he, apart from telling us, well, he was going to do the safety briefing. And he told us about the two biggest dangers of the Zambezi River. Number one, crocodiles. We cannot see the crocodile. Well, I knew already about the crocodile because we live in Australia and we have crocodiles here, and I know that they can be a bit invisible. They float in the river, they look like a log. So I decided to make sure I'd be keeping my eye out for floating logs in the river. Number two, the hippo. This one we can't see. These are actually the most dangerous animals in the whole continent of Africa. More people have been killed by hippos than by lions, leopards, elephants, or any other wild creature. One chomp from those jaws and we could be cut clean in half. The other thing Jacob told us, and I'm not going to do that accent the whole time, is that hippos like to hide under the water. They can stay underwater for a very long time. and they like to hide at the bottom of rapids. And hippos are very territorial. That means they don't like any other animal or human coming into their space. So, said our guide, with his thick African accent, don't fall out of your canoe. And if you do, get back in as quickly as you can. But better still, don't fall out of your canoe. And if you can't get back in, there's a rope on the side, just hang on to that rope, as you lose your legs probably with the hippo. So after hearing that, I was very glad that we chose and that we had a guide to take us along the river. A guide is very important, as Nola said before. Our river guide knew the best way down the river because he had been there before, or we hoped he had, and we needed to trust him. And this world is full of fear and confusion. We need a guide as well. Who guides us? People look to the media, to political and community leaders. They look to social media influencers. They look to teachers, parents, friends for guidance to help us know what to do next. All these people might be able to give a little bit of guidance, but really we need Jesus because he knows the best way for us and we need to trust him, just like we needed to trust Jacob. We were in for quite a few surprises on this trip, and here was our first one. Our big surprise was suddenly each one of us was handed a paddle. And I thought, a paddle? The pictures on the website showed the man at the back with the paddle. We all had to paddle our own canoe. And I thought, I haven't paddled anything before, but here we go. Stay close to me, said Jacob, and don't go ahead of me. Those were very wise words. We need to stay close to Jesus, and and when he is our guide, we need to make sure that we don't run ahead of him either. Abraham did that. He decided that God was taking too long to provide this heir, so he made his own plans to have an heir and continue on with his family. And I'm very good at that too. I don't know about you, but I like to make my own plans. I like to go ahead of God when it seems like he never heard what I asked him or he's taking too long to come up with the answer. I tend to go on ahead of God. Then came our next surprise. We saw our canoes. They were only inflatable ones, not the nice fiberglass ones that had been in the pictures. And 2 people in each canoe. Me and my son in one, my husband Leonard and our daughter Shona in the other. And in the third canoe was the other passenger lady, a single lady we'd picked up, and the guide. And that was our party, and off we went. We stayed pretty close to our guide's canoe as we started off, and we were I certainly was keeping my eyes on the water as well, checking for what I could see. Was there something over there in the distance? Are those rocks or hippos? Any crocodiles? Now those are definitely hippos. Can you see their little ears sticking up? Our guide seemed very relaxed as he kept us paddling away from the hippos, so we felt very safe with him, as long as we were with him. And in life, the best way to feel safe as well, and not to have to worry about what's coming tomorrow, is to stay close to Jesus, our guide. Now, how do we stay close to Jesus? We stay close to him by spending time with him every day, by talking to him in prayer, by reading what he has to say in the Bible. It was getting hotter and hotter out there on the water, but there were lots of interesting things to see, like this great big herd of wild elephants that we saw on the bank. And after a while, I noticed that my husband's canoe was getting further and further behind us. And he was taking a lot of photos too. All the photos that you're seeing today are the ones that he took on this trip. Suddenly, our guide called out, "Shh! Hippo over there!" We saw a group of hippos, not too far from us, over on the right. Most of them ignored us, except for one large male who jerked his head up and looked at us very suspiciously. And then all of a sudden, that hippo sunk beneath the water and disappeared. "Paddle, paddle!" shouted the guide. "He's charging, he's charging!" We started paddling furiously with all our might to get away from the hippo and out of his territory. The guides turned around and started shouting at Leonard, who was way behind. "Paddle, paddle, he's charging, he's charging!" But Leonard just seemed to ignore him. He didn't paddle any faster, he just kept taking his photos, going along. Meanwhile, I was praying as hard as I could to ask God to protect him and us from this charging, angry hippo. And God did. The hippo gave up and turned around and joined the rest of the group. But later on, when Leonard joined our group, we asked him, "Why didn't you listen to what the guy said and paddle faster?" "Oh," said Leonard, "I didn't understand him with his strong accent. I didn't know what he was saying." Can you turn to John 10, verse 3 to 5? And I'd love someone with a big voice to read it out for us, please. John 10, verse 3 to 5.
The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice and come to him. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. After he has gathered his own flock, he walks ahead of them and they follow him because they recognise his voice. They won't follow a stranger, they'll run from him because they don't recognise his voice.
Thank you, Wendy. If Jesus is our guide and we need to follow him, then we need to recognize his voice. We need to recognize when he's talking to us. We need to understand his accent so that we know what he's telling us. And the only way we can do that is by spending time with him. We need to get to know our guide by spending time every day with him, by listening when we pray, not just praying a shopping list of requests and a quick amen at the end. Ellen White has written many things, but this is a quote that caught my eye not long ago about the type of prayer that we need to do if we are going to recognize God's voice. She wrote this in Testimonies, Volume 7. Hope you can read it, it's a bit small. And this is what it says: "Remember that prayer is the source of your strength. A worker cannot gain success while he hurries through his prayer and rushes away to look after something that he fears may be neglected or forgotten. He gives only a few hurried thoughts to God. He does not take time to think, to pray, to wait upon the Lord for a renewal of physical and spiritual strength. He soon becomes weary. He does not feel the uplifting, inspiring influence of God's Spirit. He is not revived by fresh life, and his jaded frame and tired brain will not be soothed by personal contact with God, with Christ. We need to spend time in prayer, listening to God, as well as talking to him. You know, that reminds me of a song that I'm sure you all will know once I start reading out the words, written by a man called Thomas Lister. And the song goes like this: how long has it been since you talked with the Lord and told him your heart's hidden secrets? How long since you prayed? How long since you stayed on your knees till the light shone through? How long has it been since your mind felt at ease? How long since your heart knew no burden? Can you call him your friend? How long has it been since you knew that he cared for you? How long has it been since you knelt by your bed and prayed, prayed to the Lord up in heaven? How long since you knew that he'd answer you and would keep you the long night through? How long has it been since you woke with the dawn and felt that the day is worth the living? Can you call him your friend? Can you really? How long has it been since you knew, since you really, really knew that he cared for you? After about 1.5 hours of paddling, suddenly our guide turned right and took us up a tributary, and we followed him up this little stream, and we wondered where on earth he was going now. And we ended up at this place. Jacob was a kind guide. He could see that we were very hot and tired, and he took us here to let us get out of the water and have a little bit of a swim and a rest. And he also gave us cold drinks of juice and water. It reminded me of that good shepherd that Nola told us about. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. There were no crocodiles here or hippos. He restores my strength. After cooling off for a bit, about half an hour or so, we were back in the canoes again and off on the rest of the trip. We felt a little bit more energetic after our lovely swim. After a while, we came to a part of the river that had quite a few rocks sticking up out of it, and Jacob put up his hand to show that we all had to stop paddling. And we all gathered together in a group, and he told us that at this part of the river there was a single cranky male hippo who had been shunned out of the group, and he lived by himself, but he was very, very territorial. He did not like anyone else coming near his part of the river. So we couldn't go on until we knew where he was, because sometimes he could be under the water and then come up right underneath a canoe and tip us out. So, Jacob began to slap the water with his paddles and shout, "Oi! Oi! Bang, bang, bang!" And then wait. And we look and we scan the river. No ears popping up anywhere. No big fat hippo back coming out of the water. So some more, "Oi! Oi!" banging on a plastic box that he had in the canoe, making as much noise as he could. Stop, wait. All the time we're scanning and keeping watch for where is this wild rogue hippo, because he is a very dangerous hippo, like they all are. And all this time I was praying again in my heart, "Lord, you shut the lions' mouths for Daniel. Please shut these hippos' mouths for us today." After a while of shouting and noise making and no hippo appearing, Jacob decided it was probably safe for us to go. But I would have preferred to actually see the hippo turn up and know that he was on the bank. But anyway, we trusted him and we followed him. I was so glad that he knew the danger spots on that river. And Jesus knows the danger spots along our life's way as well. Off again we went, past magnificent baobab trees with their trunks full of water. And then we looked up and saw them. The rapids. Oh no, I'm not a bad paddler, or wasn't by then on smooth water, but I'd never ever been over a rapid in my life. And I'm here in a blow-up canoe, blow-up dinghy with my 15-year-old son, and here are rapids in front of us. Jacob decided that there were two ways to go. Let me see if I can show you on my, not that one, this one. Oops, not, yes. Jacob decided that this island here, can you see that island in the middle? We had to go around the right-hand side of that. Yeah, we needed to go around the right-hand side. And when I looked at that right-hand side, it had much more rapids on it than the left-hand side. The left-hand side looked calmer and shorter to me, but Jacob said, no, the right-hand side is where we're going. So while he was busy directing the others down, I had stopped paddling and I could feel my canoe being pulled around to that left-hand side because the current was very, very swift on that side. And by the time I realized what was happening, the current had got hold of our canoe and swept us instantly down the left-hand side, round the corner, and right as we got to the very end, right in front of us, no, actually that didn't happen. Thankfully, there were no hippos at the bottom of those rapids. But although my canoe did go around the wrong side of the island, thankfully there were no hippos, and thankfully Jacob wasn't too upset with me. But you know, that reminded me of how things go in my life every day. This happens nearly every day to me. I ask God to be my guide that day. But then I don't let him lead. I don't listen to what he says. I think I can find a better way, what looks to me the easier way, or maybe a smoother way. And then I go down that way by myself, or sometimes I let my friends pull me down that way. I know that Jesus doesn't want me to go to certain places or to do certain things, but when everybody else is doing it, it's much easier to just go with the flow. So I take over and I make my decisions and I go in my life and go my way, and then I call on Jesus when I get in trouble. Is that what it means to have Jesus as your guide? I don't think so. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 was in our scripture reading. And this is a text that I'm sure all of you know and many of you have learned of by heart. And if you know it, say it with me right now. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. But actually, I like the way that the easy-to-read version puts it. You'll find that most of my translations of the text that I use come from kids' Bibles because I really like the simplicity of those. And this is what the easy-to-read version says. Trust the Lord completely and don't depend on your own knowledge. With every step you take, think about what he wants and he will help you to go the right way. If we want Jesus to be our guide, we need to let him do the leading, totally, completely, in every single step. Every single step. How do we do that? Ourself, the who we are bit of us, needs to get right out of the way so that Jesus can be our leader, can be our boss, can be our guide in our life. Luke chapter 9, verse 23 in the New International Reader's Version, another kid's version, says it this way. Then he said to all of them, whoever wants to follow me must say no to themselves. And we all know the older version said must deny themselves. Must say no to themselves. They must pick up their cross every day and follow me. Our self is the enemy of God. Our self makes life miserable because unless we totally get rid of our self, unless our self dies, there will always be a great struggle, a tug of war between ourself, between me and Jesus for control of my life. And that doesn't make for a very happy life. If Jesus is in control, then I would have nothing to say. Galatians 5, verse 24, again from the easy-to-read version. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified their sinful self. They have given up all their old selfish feelings and the evil things they wanted to do. We must totally surrender everything to Jesus every single day. We must crucify ourselves and rely totally on Jesus. Who makes the decisions in my life, in your life? Jesus or me? Who decides what I wear? Jesus or me? Who decides what I do? Jesus or me? Who decides what I eat, what I watch, what I play? Who decides where I live? Jesus or me? Who decides who I'm friends with, where I go on holidays, what job I do, who I marry? When Jesus is our guide, when he is in control of our lives, he makes the decisions and controls what happens in our lives. And that means that we don't have to worry at all about what is going to happen tomorrow or this afternoon or in the future. Does that mean that if we surrender our lives to Jesus, that everything's going to be easy? Oh no, it won't. But Jesus will be there to help us. Now back to our river safari. We soon left those rapids behind and paddled on some more. And by now I was getting very hungry because we'd been paddling for over 4 hours in the heat. And I kept looking up at that bank, trying to see if it would be the end, trying to see that truck that Jacob had promised us. He said, when we see the truck, that's the end. The truck was going to meet us on that bank. And I couldn't stop scanning the bank every time. Just when I thought I couldn't go on for another minute, suddenly Jacob gave the shout, "There's the truck!" And we were at the end of our journey at last. We had made it safely. We were tired and hungry, but we were very happy, or I certainly was, that our guide Jacob had led us safely all that way. And when we climbed up the bank, there was a glorious feast waiting for us. And very welcome too it was. Jesus, the creator of the whole universe, the one who controls all the stars and the planets, who made everything in our world and in our universe. He wants to be our guide. He made us. He loves us so very much. In fact, he died so that we can go and live in heaven with him one day. And he is preparing a great big feast for everybody who surrenders to Him and gives everything up to Him. We just need to trust our guide. We need to follow our guide. We need to keep watch. And we need to surrender and let Him lead.